Hello everybody and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And boy, is it the countdown for conference. We're only a month away. You still have time to register. And we have so many interesting things going on at this conference. We're going to have breakout sessions with our favorite psychiatrist who does not prescribe drugs, Peter Breggin, and Move Without Pain workshops with Eileen Kopsaftis. And we will have breakout sessions involving cooking and business, if you want to be in this business of helping people the way that we do here. Dr. Anthony Lim is staying over to do a special workshop on Sunday, which is included in your ticket, on the blue zones, and talking about how their diets are pretty plant-based, but all the other things that the people in the blue zones do that keeps them so healthy. So you don't want to miss this. You absolutely positively don't want to miss it. And if you come, we're going to give you a $500 certificate towards some of our new programs. And this is the only conference you're going to go to this year where you get back more money than you spend for your conference ticket. All right, so a couple things I want to address. You guys keep the comments coming. I really enjoy the comments and responding to them when you write to me on the YouTube channel. One thing about the vitamin D issue, a couple weeks ago I did the video on responding to or putting out information about Michael Hollick, who just sort of made up this vitamin D thing, and here we are where everybody thinks they've got to take vitamin D. You guys write back and you say, well, what do you think of this and what do you think of that? And here's the thing, it isn't what I think of this or that. Here is the evidence. This is the evidence. Now, if you have some other evidence, you have to learn to weigh what you're looking at and compare it to other things. And if you don't know how to do that, hey, that's the business we're in, and we can teach you how to do it if you decide to become a member. So this doctor and that doctor in this video, and have you seen this, and what about this, is not the issue. It's really the evidence, and that's what I'm reporting here. I think we stand on pretty solid ground, and if you have something else, you should be able to compare it to what I put out. Another thing is that when you send stories, well, I ate the blood type diet and I ended up losing weight, and I drink coconut oil and I'm in great health. I have news for you. Those are stories, and stories are not a substitute for science. And I'll believe you. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you're chugging coconut oil in the morning and you're still feeling great and your arteries aren't clogged. But we're not going to put that information out because those are stories, not science. I mean, I know people who drive drunk, but I'm not going to try it, all right? Because the fact that they've gotten away with it, not a good reason for me to do it. All right, so I want to give you some good news, and I am really excited about this. Our Columbus newspaper featured an article, and this was last week, September 17th, and this came from Bloomberg News, and according to this, Americans are eating at home more. We've hit an all-time high of eating at home. 82% of meals are now being prepared at home, more than we cooked at home 10 years ago. The authors say that there are all kinds of reasons for this. One of them is Netflix. I guess apparently dinner and a movie has now become cook at home and watch Netflix, which is fine because some people are watching documentaries on Netflix, and that's how some of you came to be watching me today. Another thing is grocery delivery. Like, people don't have to go to the grocery store anymore. Shipped and a bunch of different places like that, and Kroger has its own delivery service. You can just get online and have your groceries delivered, and without having to make that trip, it's a lot easier to make dinner. And they said a focus on healthier eating. A few other things they mentioned is that there are so many easy options, like you can buy carrots and celery and things that are pre-chopped and microwavable, all kinds of meal prep aids in the grocery store. So really, if you are inclined to try making meals at home at all, this is the best time to do it. There's never been more help available. The authors advise that when you see these statistics about the rising revenues in restaurants, they said it's not necessarily because people are eating more meals out. It's more that the prices are increasing, particularly in the fast food segment. The prices have gone up. So the revenues have gone up, but they're really not serving more food or more meals. So I thought this was really good news for a lot of reasons, and one of them is that the studies are clear that children in particular eat a lot better when they eat meals at home with their family. But you might remember a few months ago, I filmed a video clip on some research showing that adults do better with family meals too. So it's not just the kids that are eating better, the parents are eating better when they're eating meals with their children at family meals. So this is really good news. So I focus so much on bad news. Every once in a while, it's good to share something with you that, hey, it's moving in the right direction. So more of that. All right, well, now we go back to the bad news. Unfortunately, that's my job, is to educate you about stuff so that you don't get hurt by medicine. So here's the story. On September 14th, this is just a few days ago, the prestigious Cochrane Collaboration announced that it had expelled Dr. Peter Gøtzsche, director of Cochrane's Nordic Center and a member of the governing board. Peter Gøtzsche is a friend and colleague. He addressed our conference last year with 2 presentations. I can't say I'm surprised, and I think you'll understand by the time I'm finished here. But anyway, it's a distressing situation on a number of different levels. Well, in protest, 4 other board members decided to resign, and then the board went to 2 appointed members and asked them if they would resign so that they could keep the balance between appointed and elected members. So there have been quite a few departures from Cochrane. By the way, only 6 people voted to expel Gøtzsche, and it wasn't a majority, but they did it anyway. And the board justified its decision with a public announcement saying that Gøtzsche had brought disrepute, that's the term they used, to the organization. The board stated that Cochrane had received numerous complaints concerning a critique co-authored by Dr. Gøtzsche of a Cochrane review regarding the HPV vaccine. Now, I've watched as Dr. Gøtzsche has become a little more radicalized. He's kind of in our camp now, and he started to speak out about things that we know upset the establishment, and Cochrane here previously has not been part of the establishment, but apparently that is the way that they're moving now. Dr. Gøtzsche issued his own statement in the form of a letter in which he writes that he was given no reasonable explanation for his expulsion. He states that he believes the origin of the dispute is that Cochrane's interests have shifted to more business and profit motives, while scientific debate about the merits and harms of healthcare interventions is supposed to be the purpose of the organization. His criticism of the pharmaceutical industry, he says, has generated complaints to Cochrane, which has resulted in attempts to censor his work. He believes that Cochrane is caving to outside pressure by removing him in the way that they just did. David Hammerstein Mintz, one of the members who resigned in protest, said that board members thought that that Gøtzsche's recent criticism of Cochrane was causing trouble. He feels that this expulsion is going to cause a whole lot more trouble than that. He says it might have been a headache, but the harm done by expelling Peter is much greater than any inconvenience caused by scientific debate. And I guess that's kind of disturbing in a way. Why is scientific debate in the medical field considered an inconvenience at all? Well, one of the main sources of conflict was this critique that Dr. Gøtzsche and his colleagues wrote about a Cochrane review addressing safety and efficacy concerns concerning the HPV vaccine. And the 3 authors were Gøtzsche, Jorgensen, and Tom Jefferson. Tom Jefferson has authored a lot of other Cochrane reviews about the flu vaccine, which has been shown to be useless for everybody. It is that season, by the way. They're starting to put a lot of pressure on you. I walked into Walmart the other day and I thought they were going to kidnap me or knock me down with tranquilizer darts just to make sure that I got my flu vaccine. But I digress. So here's the critique. I'm going to give you the high points. I read it online, and it was pretty scathing, but I think there were good reasons for it to be pretty scathing. So here goes. The Cochrane review, according to Gøtzsche and his couple of colleagues, did not include almost half of eligible trials. So the one that was published regarding safety and efficacy included 26 randomized trials with 73,248 women. Gøtzsche and his friends identified 206 comparative studies, so 26 instead of 206, not good. Now, of these, a third were not published, and half of the 206 that were posted on clinicaltrials.gov had no results posted. Yet the review had a very interesting statement that, quote, nearly all end-of-study reports have been published in the peer-reviewed literature. Now, I don't know what nearly all means to you, but half, not really nearly all. Well, in any case, of the 206 studies, Gøtzsche and his colleagues showed that 46 eligible trials with over 121,000 participants should have been included in the review, and this review included 26 with a little over 73,000. None of the trials included in this Cochrane review used a placebo comparator and instead used active ingredients like aluminum or hepatitis B vaccines, which are known to cause harms like myalgia. While the Cochrane review did state that the comparison of adverse events was compromised as a result of this, the statement didn't appear until later in the article, to be specific, 7,500 words later, and was placed under the heading, quote, potential bias in the review process. Well, the use of active placebo was a bias in the design of the HPV trials, and it had nothing to do with the review of the trials. The use of active placebo, according to Gøtzsche et al., quote, probably increased the occurrence of harms in the comparator group and therefore masked harms caused by the HPV vaccines. Also noted was the fact that women were excluded from trials who had a history of immunological or nervous system disorders. This information was not put on the package insert under the warning section, and this means that there are probably significantly more vaccine-related harms when you administer the vaccine in the general public, where you're not excluding people who have a history of immunological or neurological disorders. So this makes the trials not very helpful in determining safety, at least. The critique stated that serious adverse events were omitted in the review. For example, the published data for the Patricia trial only included 2/3 of serious adverse events that were listed on the clinicaltrials.gov site. The authors of the review also chose not to report serious events for the entire trial periods. In one trial that included 4 years of follow-up, serious adverse events were only reported for the first 14 months, and then there was no description of what those events actually were. The review did report more injury and death in the HPV vaccine group, but suggested that this was most likely due to chance. However, the way the events were coded may have been biased as well. For example, an event labeled traumatic head injury might be caused by a neurological disorder or syncope, which is a known side effect or harm of the HPV vaccine. So it's very important the way that the drug companies code events to either be honest and forthcoming about what really happened or to disguise the real source of events. So that's a problem. The review stated that the incidence of mild events was the same in both vaccine and placebo group, yet neglected to include data from all of the trials in arriving at this conclusion. So there seemed to be some deliberate manipulation of the data. The authors of the review stated that they planned to request missing and unpublished data, but decided not to do so because they were out of time, which I think is interesting. Gøtzsche and colleagues note that lack of time does not seem to be a valid response or excuse for not gathering and analyzing all of the data. I don't get that lack of time. I don't think Cochrane puts due dates on the reviews. You turn them in when they're finished in a comprehensive way. While the review reported that there was no influence from industry funding, 100% of the trials that they analyzed were funded by the makers of HPV vaccines. So I don't know how they got that. Furthermore, it gets worse. There was an original Cochrane review of protocols for the HPV vaccine. There were 14 authors of that protocol, almost all of whom were working for the vaccine makers. And 3 out of 4 of the authors of the review that Gøtzsche and his colleagues were critiquing, which I'm reporting to you now, had conflicts of interest. For example, the article's lead author is currently head of the European Medicine Agency's post-marketing surveillance for HPV vaccine, a position funded by Sanofi Pasteur, co-manufacturer of Gardasil. Okay, so how they could possibly say doesn't seem to be any possible conflict of interest here is just kind of beyond me. Gøtzsche and colleagues concluded that while part of Cochrane Collaboration's motto has historically been, quote, trusted evidence, they found that the Cochrane HPV vaccine review was a biased analysis of biased trials. They further stated that it didn't meet the standards for a Cochrane review. While not mentioned in the public statements that the governing board put out, another likely point of contention, and this is my opinion, is that Dr. Gøtzsche has also started speaking out publicly and quite loudly about psychiatric drugs. He wrote a book called Deadly Psychiatry and Organized Denial in 2015. He's posted several very provocative lectures on YouTube on this topic. In 2016, he founded the International Institute for Psychiatric Drug Withdrawal in Sweden. And in 2017, he taught a course for about psychiatric drug withdrawal for both patients and doctors. He posted several articles on sites like Mad in America, and he made presentations at our conference. When you start hanging out with me, you probably are going to have some problems. So he made 2 presentations, one of which was directly related to this topic at our conference last year. So this is distressing. And I was teaching a class last night. We were talking about this very issue. And so one of the questions that was asked was, my gosh, we've always trusted Cochrane. So what do we do? Well, my feeling about it is that probably things that go back a few years are trustworthy. Things that were written more recently, not so much. But Cochrane has definitely degenerated from a source of trusted evidence to one that must be scrutinized like every other source of health information. For the record, I will not be completing the Cochrane review that I have been spending some time on or submitting it. I have a hunch that it probably wouldn't get published at this point anyway. It's refreshing to know, in spite of all this mess, that there are people in the medical field who continue to be brave enough to stand up and call out misbehavior, even when such misbehavior is performed by powerful scientific institutions like Cochrane. So I say to you, Dr. Gøtzsche, bravo. I respect and admire you for your determination to stand for something, even when such principled decisions result in upheaval and the potential for personal loss. But I'm with the board member who resigned. I think what's going to happen is these people are going to wish they never did this. At least that's my hope. And more people speaking out against the misbehavior. This kind of turned into an international incident, which I think is really cool because, and I don't think Cochrane's winning in the court of public opinion. All right, please hit the like button in the corner there. Be a subscriber. Click on subscribe and click on the bell. We'll send you notifications every time we post something so that you can see all these videos as they come out. And as usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it. Couple things. The first one is, if you're interested in any of the things we do here, including careers, pampopper@msn.com. Those of you who email know I always answer you back. We can set up a time, talk about your career aspirations. Second thing, on Thursday this week, you're in for a special treat. It is another conversation that I had with Dr. Peter Bregan about what to do for the ADHD child when you don't want a drug. And that should always be the case, by the way. You don't want a drug. All right, that's all for today. I'll be back to you on Thursday on video with more news.